Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tosh Talks. I am Tosh Berman, and I'm here to talk about, this is going to be a real surprise, an album. This is a record called the 25-Year Retrospective Concert of the Music of John Cage. A double LP set in a box set that comes with a book, or a booklet to be more exact. And this album was recorded at Town Hall, New York, May 15th, 1958. And interestingly enough, the concert was produced by Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns, and Emilio Di Antonio, who's an interesting man himself. Antonio was a documentary filmmaker who was very close to the artists of that time, a lot of the abstract expressionists, as well as the emerging pop art scene in the late 50s, early 60s. And Antonio did a lot of political related films. One of the first filmmakers to focus on the Kennedy assassination, his comment on the Vietnam War. And so he took on many radical political causes at that time. And he was also a very close friend of Andy Warhol. In fact, there's a funny story about when Warhol started doing his painting seriously, I think around the same time, late 50s, early 60s, Warhol had two types of portraits, both on the Coca-Cola bottle. And the two paintings, one painting was very paintery. You can see the paint drips of the Coca-Cola bottle. And the other one was like totally a realistic, like photorealism of a Coke bottle. And Warhol could not come to the conclusion which one is the better painting or what direction he should go to. And I think everybody told him pretty much that you should go with the paintery bottle of the Coke bottle, the portrait, because it shows the actual paint, little paint drips that shows the hand more than the photorealistic portrait, the other painting. And Antonio said, no, that's totally bullshit, man. Do the photorealistic Coke bottle, because that's what you're at, that's what you are. So, of course, that's what Warhol did, and then that sort of sprung Warhol's career in a way, or his aesthetic at the time, that he kept on until he passed away many years later. So anyway, this gentleman, Antonio, with Jasper John and Robert Rauschenberg, arranged a concert of their very close friend, John Cage. And here's the album cover. And this album is a limited edition of 500 copies. And you'd be proud to know that I have the number 208 out of 500 copies. And what's totally fascinating to me is, for one, I'm not a huge fan of a live recording or a live album because it doesn't really convey. It's mostly a marketing thing for a band between two studio albums or whatever. But the one live album that I think is essential, besides this one, is James Brown Live at the Apollo, Volume 1, which came out in 1962. And the other must-have live album is the 25-Year Retrospective Concert of the Music of John Cage, because not only the music is important on those two albums, but the fact is the place and time where it was recorded. When Brown did the Live at the Apollo, which was like in 61 or 62, it really captured a moment in time in his career that was impossible to capture on a studio disc. Because the audience and the place was just as important as James Brown's music, as well as his presence at that particular location. And the John Cage concert, and this is like the first big John Cage show in New York, or maybe anywhere in the world at that time. So they rented out the Town Hall in New York, and for one night only, it's a retrospective of John Cage's music. At the time, he's been doing this for 25 years. So when you're getting this album, you're not only getting beautifully recorded music, which it is, you're not only getting a great introduction to John Cage's world and music, but you're also getting a moment in time when these people met. And what's even more important, like a James Brown show, you get the audience reception of what they're seeing in front of them. With the James Brown concert, it's obviously the fans are going crazy. They're going lunatical. I mean, it's going like almost in sexual, orgasmic feelings for James Brown on the stage. And that's very much part of that live album. The audience knows this is important as the music being performed on the stage by Brown and his fabulous flames. Equally important is John Cage performing his music to an audience, and you can hear the audience very well in this recording. And what's fascinating is at least a quarter or maybe even half the audience are booing him. They're booing the show. And it's fascinating. I mean, first of all, you get a little bit of everything. I'm going to tell you what's on this album. It's a double album. You get 6 short inventions for 7 instruments. First construction in metal. His very famous Imaginary Landscape No. 1. The Wonderful Widow of 18 Springs. And then on side B is all his prepared piano pieces. So you're getting like almost like, like a half an hour solid of this, at least 10 separate pieces, all written for and played on a prepared piano, which I presume is played by David Tudor, who is a long-term friend of John Cage and also his sort of right-hand person, or the person who could actually do the things. He can build the stuff for John Cage's to do his work. And a prepared piano is basically a regular grand piano, but inside the piano, where the piano strings are, they have been altered or changed, or detuned, or objects are put in there like marbles or a piece of metal, which causes the string to vibrate differently. So in a way, when you play the piano, so you're getting the piano sound, it still sounds like a piano, but it's very sort of percussive. It's very much like a percussion instrument, but it still can play a melody. And so that's all of like side B. Then side C is music for Carillon, No. 1, the Williams mix, She's Asleep, and side B is Concerto for Piano and Orchestra. Now, the Williams mix and Concert for Piano and Orchestra causes the most extreme reaction from the audience. It's very interesting. It has been noted that the people in the cheaper seats were booing. People in the expensive seats were applauding quite loud. Now, whatever that means, they're actually friends of John Cage and the real people. I mean, not real people just came from the street to buy the cheap ticket. But there's a whole like sort of circus aspect of it. And you always heard about this, like when Diaghilev presented Parade, for instance, that it would cause like little mini riots and the audience uproar. We hear about this, but we never actually hear it. There's no evidence of this. There's no photographs of this. But here on this album, you can actually hear the booing. And the music is consistently being played, and like you hear like boo, 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 and then the audience clapping, to beat out the boos in the back of the theater. And so that tension you can feel that tension while listening to this album. It's really great. It's actually part of a performance. I don't think John Cage would consider it part of the performance, but it is a document. And that's the other thing about live albums. Like a regular rock and roll live album these days, or even from the 60s and 70s, it's a lot of times they tape it from various concerts, and then like a collage, they added stuff. They added, even one performance can be from like several concerts. But 25-year retrospective concert of the music of John Cage, as well as James Brown Apollo album, is recorded one day, one night, one performance, no overdubs, and it's also, that's the music you're hearing performed on that stage or that place. And again, it's not only the music that's important, it's also important the year, the place that it played in, at the Town Hall in New York City, 42nd Street, I believe, or 43rd Street, and the audience there participating and reacting to the music as it was happening. So in 1958, this is all pretty new. Like you're going to go to a concert hall to hear a composer's work, you expect a symphony or a piano piece. But here you're like being bombarded by Cage's aesthetic, not just one piece, but like a 2-hour event of this John Cage hardcore, some say experimental music, but Cage would not call it experimental music because he knows exactly what he's doing. It's not an experiment with him. So experimental music is a weird term to use for new music of that time. But nevertheless, here's the audience coming in, and probably the majority of the audience do not know John Cage's work that well. He was known, but not super famous. So it's very fascinating that audience would take a chance to go to a show like that. And therefore, you get an honest reaction from that audience where they feel like they're part of the spectacle. It is a spectacle. It's not only a concert, but it's a spectacle. And in this spectacle, the audience participates, what they're seeing in front of them or what they're hearing in front of them. And the beauty of this album is that it captures all of that. You really get the whole thing. So there are many John Cage recordings that are great. But as an introduction to his work, I would recommend this album because you are getting at least 4 or 5 different types of John Cage music. So you get a pretty much overall what he has done and what he will do in the future. And also the essence of having Jasper Johns and Robert Rauschenberg involved is pretty amazing too, that they're actually, help produce the show. So you're getting the social life of this time period. And the book, it comes with a booklet, as I mentioned. And the booklet has some photographs, but a lot of liner notes. It's a very well-written text by various people about the night, about that concert. And this is a beautiful package. Again, only 500 copies are made. And it's published by, or put out by a label called Modern Silence. They're from Europe, somewhere in Europe. And they specialize in reissuing avant-garde music works as well as jazz recordings. Again, the 25-year retrospective concert of the music of John Cage, recorded in performance at Town Hall, New York, May 15th, 1958. Essential record to buy and own for anyone who's interested in 20th century culture and music. This is Tosh Talk. Thank you.